welcome back to the farm again this week. With our ornamental grasses, we always leave them up over the winter because two things. One is you get some fantastic movement with the stems over the winter and they look fantastic with a bit of frost on them as well. But there's always a balance between when to cut and when not to cut. And now looking at the selection that I've pulled forward, is now telling me that they want to be cut back, ready for the spring, ready for the new growth to come through this year. For example, the one at the end here, which is Briza media or Quaking Grass, which looks absolutely stunning when it's covered in the flowers late summer. As you can see, if you come in at the base, you've got all these tiny little new shoots just starting to come through, the new blades. So if we were to leave this much longer, we're then going to be cutting off the new shoots. So really, we want to now be coming in and being really hard, cutting this almost back to ground level, just above those new shoots that are just starting to come through. And as you can see, I'm just combing through as well, taking off any of the old blades of grass, and basically just giving me a nice solid clump that's going to start shooting. You can already start to see now. I know we've got a bit of moss in there as well because it's very wet, but you can start to see all these new shoots that are just starting to peek through. So they'll now come up and form a nice healthy clump ready for the spring. This one is Calamagrostis Karl Foerster, and again you can just start to see the new shoots coming from the base. Sometimes these wouldn't be coming through another month, but because it's just starting to shoot now, I want to take this down to about 2 inches and cut all that old growth out of the way of the new shoots and allow the new shoots to develop. So that's just going to tidy this up, and it's going to mean that the new shoots that are going to come in the next week or so are then going to be undisturbed. The grasses that we're cutting back now, I'm cutting mine back now because it's suddenly warmed up. Normally this job would be carried out towards the end of March in most years. Because mine have started to shoot, I want to make sure that I've got a nice clean base, nice clean clumps ready for these grasses to grow away. If you leave them and you've actually got growth that's up higher, new green growth, all I would do is cut them slightly higher. The key is that, for example, if I wasn't coming in and cutting them now, if I came to these in a month's time and the green shoots were up at this height, that would be the height that I would cut, and I'd be cutting all last year's growth off. So if the green shoots were at that height, I'd be coming in a bit higher and cutting it back like that. Because my shoots are just coming from the base, I can actually go in a bit lower, and it gives me a tidier looking clump then for this year. So, but it's a good time just to keep everything under control. If you've got a big clump of grass in your garden, there's no reason why you can't do this with head shears. There's two there that definitely, because they're starting to move, want to be done now. One grass again that we wouldn't normally do till later on, but again, they are getting quite big. This is Stipa gigantea, or golden oatmeal grass. The key with this grass is, normally, particularly if you're down in the south of England, you might find that this grass is more evergreen. Up here in the north, it tends to be more semi-evergreen, and it will lose some of its leaves over the winter and always tends to look a little bit tired. Traditional sort of advice would be to follow back last year's flowered stem and cut that off. But when you're doing any trimming with Stipa, the most important thing is just always feeling at the base, because quite often you will feel this year's flower spikes develop. So when you're putting your fingers in at the base there, and I think there's one coming in there, we've got a fatter stem, a lot more sturdy, and probably that's going to then develop into a flower spike for this year. So what we don't want to do when we're trimming them back, By all means, we can comb through, which is a traditional way of keeping these grasses clean. But the most important thing with Stipa is to check that you're not cutting off this year's flowers, because you grow them for the fantastic flower stalks that are up at 5 or 6 foot high, flowing in the wind. So all I'm going to do with that grass, basically, if you can look at last year's growth, that's obviously been a bit weathered, I want to take that back to about 9 or 10 inches. Again, I've checked my space, my stalks, just to make sure that I haven't cut any of the flower spikes that are coming for this year. And I just want to trim and tidy that plant up, and that's good for this year. With the Stipa, you can see the one that I've combed through and tidied up, and this is another one that's not yet been touched. It's basically, ideally, this is what you're after. The most important thing is checking at the base of the plant so that you're not then cutting or damaging any flower spikes that have already started to set ready for this year. A lot of the grass maintenance is just literally combing through with your fingers and taking off last year's old growth, and then you can really start to see the new shoots underneath that are just peeking through, because when these new shoots develop and they're 4 or 5 inches high, it's a lot harder then to get in and comb the old growth out. If you're wanting to put structure into a flower bed, and again this is something that we do a lot when we're planting up our clients' gardens, then if you don't want to be very hard and use tight hedges and tight clipped shrubs, grasses can give you a much softer backbone to a garden where you've got a lot more movement. And working with the flowering perennials, they tie the two together and it links, and it gives you that continuity working through the beds and working through the garden. If you're new to grasses, one of the simplest grasses to grow probably would be one of the Calamagrostis. Karl Foerster, if you want a tall grass, go with Karl Foerster, which will flower at probably 4 to 5 foot in height. If you want one that is a little bit simpler and take a bit more wet over the winter once it's established, then Brachytrichta, which is the species Calamagrostis, but very, very easy to look after and very easy to manage. Full sun to semi-shade, you get more flowers in full sun, but they will still flower in semi-shade without any issues at all. If you've got existing grasses in your garden and they're doing really well and the clump is maybe getting a little bit too big, then spring or autumn are both good times for actually lifting that clump, dividing it and replanting. So if you want to help to bulk up your grasses, or again give them to family and friends, then that's a good time for doing it. Thank you very much for watching. If you find it useful, then please hit the like button and let us know. We'll try and do another video, I think probably later on this month, on splitting and division of some of the perennials and some of the grasses, just to show you how easy some of that can be. At the moment, I've got quite a bit of work to do, so I'll probably leave it there for this week. The only other thing I was just going to mention, obviously with my cuttings, I'm putting it into the tub and taking it into the compost. If I was working in a garden, or it was my garden at home, for example, a lot of the grass cuttings that we've just done, there is no reason at all why they couldn't be left over the border, and they're going to naturally degrade and help to improve the soil structure. It's quite a big trend now. It's called cut and drop, basically. So if you're cutting back in the spring with perennials and with your grasses particularly, there is no reason and it's no detriment to actually just chopping up very fine your cuttings and leaving that as a surface mulch. It will help to improve the soil structure. The birds will also take some of that and use that for building nests as well. So you cut back your perennials hard in the spring, those cuttings can be left on the border for the worms to take down into the soil and improve the soil structure. So it's free organic matter. And a lot of this grassy material will be fantastic, almost just chopped up a little bit smaller, which you could just do use it as a mulch around the base of the plant, and that will help to keep the moisture in for the spring. So believe it or not, that was before I brought it out into the wind. This grass, this is golden oatmeal, and this is last year's flower spike. That's now in about 3 pieces, just in the wind.